She was standing in her own kitchen, in her own house, holding a tray of food, while her husband slow danced with another woman 20 feet away. And nobody in that room thought anything was wrong with that. Let that sit with you for a second. Now, before we go any further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching this from. Atlanta, Houston, Chicago, Detroit, wherever you are, I need you locked in because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about staying quiet. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Because we don't do surface-level stories on this channel. We go deep. Now, let's talk about Zara Odom. Zara wasn't soft. She grew up in Decatur, Georgia, not the good side either. The kind of block where you learned early that life doesn't hand you anything, and people will take from you the moment you stop paying attention. She was raised by her great-aunt Delphine Cross, a quiet, sharp woman who owned half a street's worth of rental properties across 4 counties in Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee, and never once let anyone know it. Delphine didn't wear her wealth, she stored it, and before she died she made sure every single dollar of it had somewhere to go. But we'll get back to that. Zara met Tobias Odom at a block party in East Atlanta when she was 24. He was the kind of man who made a room feel bigger just by walking into it, charming, attentive, always had the right thing to say. She married him 2 years later in a small ceremony at Delphine's house with 30 people, potato salad, and Stevie Wonder playing from somebody's phone speaker. For a while, it was good. Then it wasn't. By the time Zara turned 31, Tobias had changed into someone she barely recognized. Cold, dismissive, coming home late and looking at her like she was furniture. And his mother, Renata Odom, had always despised Zara, called her bottom of the barrel, said Tobias married down, said it openly, at the dinner table, in front of the company. Zara endured it, quietly, the way Delphine taught her, but then Delphine passed. And 3 weeks after the funeral, while Zara was still grieving, still raw, still barely sleeping, a courier knocked on the door with a certified envelope addressed to her. Inside was a letter from Delphine's attorney. Zara read it standing right there in the doorway. Then she read it again. The Delphine Cross estate, 388 properties across 9 states, valued at $95 billion. Sole heir, Zara Elaine Odom. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something she didn't have a word for yet. She kept reading. And then she hit a line that stopped her cold. The address of the property she was currently standing in, the house Tobias had always called his family home, the house his father Darnell Odom had always run as he owned it, was listed right there. Line 6, property number 41. Tobias's family was never the owner. They were managers, caretakers, paid to maintain what was always Delphine's, and by extension, always Zara's. Every deed was in Delphine's name, every contract, every brick. Zara folded the letter, put it in the pocket of her jeans, walked back inside, and that's when she saw it. Tobias, laughing with a woman Zara had never seen before, pregnant, glowing, standing in Zara's living room as if she already lived there. Because today, Zara's husband had invited people over to celebrate his engagement to his side chick in Zara's house, and Renata had already handed Zara a serving tray. "Make yourself useful," she said, "and stay out of the way." Zara looked down at that tray. Then she looked up at that room, and she smiled. "Stay with me, because what happens next nobody in that house was ready for. And I need you to understand something before we go further. Zara didn't explode. She didn't flip tables. She didn't pull anybody to the side and whisper threats. She picked up that tray, walked into that living room, and started passing out food like she was hired help. That was the most dangerous thing she could have done, because when you already hold the card that ends the game, you don't rush to play it. You wait. You watch. You let everybody show you exactly who they are. Delphine taught her that. Let's go back, because you need to understand where Zara came from to understand what she was capable of. Decatur, Georgia, 1990s. A two-bedroom house on Briar Creek Road with a screen door that never closed right and a landlord who came by on the first of every month with his hand out. Zara's mama worked doubles at the hospital and still came home short. There were nights they ate crackers and peanut butter and called it dinner. But Delphine was always there, every Sunday, sitting at that kitchen table teaching Zara things school never would. Baby, money is just a tool. The question is, who's holding it, and do they know what it's for? Delphine drove a used Buick, wore the same church shoes for 12 years, and quietly, without ever making a sound, she built an empire out of Section 8 rentals, foreclosure buys, and patience. She never told Zara the full extent of it. Just told her, one day, I'm going to give you something. And when I do, I need you to already be the woman who can carry it. Zara spent her whole life becoming that woman. Then Tobias happened. He wasn't always cruel. That's what makes betrayal so hard. It doesn't start ugly. It starts soft. He used to call her on his lunch break just to hear her voice. Used to show up at her job with takeout because she mentioned she was tired. He made her feel chosen. But 3 years in, something shifted. He started staying out. Started talking to her sideways. Started bringing his mother's opinions into their marriage like they were laws. Renata had never accepted Zara, not once, and now she had full access. Moving things around in Zara's house, questioning her cooking, making little comments in front of people that landed just hard enough to sting. And Darnell, Tobias's father, just sat back and let it happen. Watched it all with that quiet approval that men like him call staying out of it. Then came the night Tobias sat Zara down at their kitchen table and told her about Simone. No guilt, no apology, just Simone is pregnant. I love her. I want a divorce. You need to start making arrangements to leave. Just like that. Like Zara was a lease he wasn't renewing. What followed was 4 months of quiet war. Renata started treating Zara like a roommate who'd overstayed. Her belongings got moved to the back bedroom. Her name got taken off the grocery list. Tobias brought Simone to the house, and let her sit at Zara's table as she'd already won. And today, they had the nerve to throw a whole celebration. Music, catered wings, and decorations from Party City. Tobias's cousins from Macon drove up. Neighbors came through. Renata wore a dress as if it were Easter Sunday, and Zara passed out plates. She heard Renata tell somebody, "She's helping out." You know how it is. Some women don't know when to let go. The room laughed. Zara refilled the cups. The letter was still in her pocket. She hadn't touched it since she folded it that morning. Didn't need to. Every word was already burned into her memory. She looked around that room, at Tobias feeding Simone a piece of cake, at Renata holding court by the window, at Darnell nodding along to whatever somebody was saying about the family legacy, and she thought about something Delphine told her once, near the end. Zara, the most powerful thing you can do to a person who underestimates you is nothing. Until it's time. It was almost time. Don't go anywhere. What happens next is about to change everything, and I promise you, nobody in that room saw it coming. Drop a comment right now. Just say, "I'm here," because what I'm about to tell you is the part of this story that people are going to be talking about. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now before we go further. Darnell Odom stood up, tapped his plastic cup with a fork like it was crystal, cleared his throat, and started talking. He talked about the house, about how it had been in the family for over 20 years. It was a symbol of what the Odom name had built, how Tobias was carrying on a legacy, how Simone was bringing new life into a family with roots and foundation, and Zara set down her tray. The sound of it hitting the table wasn't loud, but something about it cut straight through the music, through the conversation, through Darnell's speech. People turned, not because she was causing a scene, but because there was something in the way she moved that made a room pay attention. She untied the apron from around her waist, folded it, set it on top of the tray. Tobias frowned. Zara, she didn't look at him. She reached into the pocket of her jeans and pulled out the letter. Here's what you have to understand about this moment. Zara didn't cry, She didn't shake. She didn't look around for sympathy or validation or anybody to co-sign what she was about to do. She stood in the middle of that living room, the same living room where she'd been handed a serving tray 4 hours ago, and she started reading. Not all of it, just the parts that mattered, the name of the estate, the total value, 9 states, 388 properties. She read slowly, clearly, like she was reading scripture. And then she read the address of the house they were standing in, the house Darnell had just called a family legacy, the house Renata had run as she owned it for years, the house Tobias had told Zara to vacate. It was listed as property number 41 in the Delphine Cross Estate portfolio, and the sole heir to the Delphine Cross Estate was Zara Elaine Odom. The room didn't erupt. It went quiet in that particular way that happens when something shifts, and everyone feels it at the same time, but nobody knows what to do with it yet. Renata's face did something complicated. Darnell sat back down. Tobias started to speak, "That's not," and then stopped, because Delphine's attorney was already standing up from the corner chair where he'd been sitting for the past 2 hours, quiet as wallpaper. He set a folder on the coffee table. Deeds, contracts, letters. Every document goes back 22 years. The Odom family's role was right there in black and white. Property managers, paid caretakers. The ownership had never transferred, not once. Everything Darnell called legacy, he'd been borrowing it. Zara looked at Tobias, really looked at him, and when she spoke, her voice was even. No tears, no performance. Just the weight of a woman who had finally stopped carrying something she was never meant to put down. "You told me to leave your house," she said. "This isn't your house. It was never your house. And I need all of y'all to get out of mine." Simone looked at Tobias. Tobias looked at his father. Darnell looked at the folder on the table. Renata opened her mouth, and for the first time in the 15 years Zara had known her, nothing came out. The music was still playing from somebody's Bluetooth speaker. Kirk Franklin, Smale, and Zara, she did. The falling action and the final reckoning drop next. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the way this ends will stay with you. You already know what just happened. But here's the thing about a room full of people who just watched everything fall apart. Nobody leaves clean. Darnell picked up that folder from the coffee table, opened it, closed it, opened it again like the words were going to change the second time around. They didn't. 22 years of believing something was yours, and it takes about 45 seconds for a piece of paper to dismantle all of it. Tobias pulled Simone to the side. Low voices, tight faces. You could see it happening in real time, the moment a man realizes the foundation he promised a woman doesn't exist. Simone had her hand on her stomach. She wasn't looking at Tobias anymore. She was looking at the door. Nobody was eating. The guests cleared out fast. Not all at once. It wasn't dramatic like that. It was the quiet kind of exodus where people suddenly remember they have somewhere else to be. Coats got grabbed. Kids got rounded up. Somebody unplugged the speaker mid-song. One of Tobias's cousins from Macon walked past Zara on his way out, looked her dead in the eye, and gave her a slow nod. That nod said everything. Renata was the last one standing. She stood in the middle of that living room, the room she had rearranged, redecorated, and presided over like a queen for years, and she looked at Zara with something that wasn't quite anger anymore. It was smaller than anger. Tighter. The look of a woman who had built her whole identity on a house of cards and just watched somebody breathe on it. "You always thought you were better than us," Renata said. Zara didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, just said, "No, ma'am. I just knew something you didn't." The legal process moved quietly and quickly. Zara's attorney had been ready for weeks. She'd called him the same morning the inheritance letter arrived, before she ever picked up that serving tray. Every document was already in order. The Odom family's occupancy arrangement was terminated. Tobias's divorce attorney took one look at the asset inventory and withdrew within the week. There was nothing left to negotiate over. Tobias tried once to reach Zara directly. A text message, short, Something about doing this the right way and thinking about what's fair. She read it, didn't respond. Her attorney did 2 days later, professionally. Finally, Renata attempted to call twice. Both times, Zara let it ring. But here's the part that doesn't make the legal documents. About 3 weeks after everything settled, Zara was sitting on the back porch of the house. Her house, early in the morning before the neighborhood woke up. Coffee in her hand. Birds are doing their thing in the oak tree Delphine had planted in 1987. And she cried. Not from pain, not from bitterness. She cried because she finally could. Because for so long she had to stay composed, had to be measured and quiet and strategic, and now there was nobody left to perform strength for. It was just her. And the oak tree. And 37 years of a woman who loved her before she understood what she was worth. She whispered, "I got it, Auntie." The oak tree didn't move, but somehow it felt like an answer. 1 year later, Zara did something nobody expected. Stay with me for the final chapter. 1 year, that's all it took. 1 year for the woman who was handed a serving tray in her own house to turn that same house into something that made the whole neighborhood stop and stare, for the right reasons this time. Zara didn't renovate it to flex. Didn't flip it for profit or put it on Airbnb or let some real estate developer talk her into cashing out. She sat with Delphine's attorney for 3 months, went through every single property in the portfolio, and asked one question about each one. Who does this serve right now, and who should it be serving? That question changed everything. The house on Briar Creek Road, the one she grew up watching her mama struggle to afford, Zara bought the building and cut the rent in half. The tenants didn't know who did it for 6 months. She didn't need them to know. 40 miles south, a strip of commercial properties in a small Georgia town that had been generating passive income for decades got restructured. 2 of them became a community health clinic and a workforce training center. One became a child care facility that charges on a sliding scale, quietly. No press release. No ribbon cutting with politicians. Just the work. Back at the main house, the one Darnell called a legacy, and Renata redecorated as she owned it, Zara converted the East Wing. 7 rooms. 7 women. All of them in the same place Zara had been, staying somewhere they should have left, carrying something they were never meant to carry alone, waiting for permission to want more. She called it the Delphine House. Not a shelter, a transition home. 6 months of full support, legal aid, financial counseling, and job placement. Because Delphine didn't just leave Zara money. She left her a blueprint. And Zara finally understood that the blueprint was never just for her. Word got around the way things do in black neighborhoods, through church, through cookouts, through somebody's cousin knowing somebody's sister. People started showing up. Volunteers. Donors. A retired social worker from Decatur who said she'd been waiting for something like this her whole career. A 23-year-old from Bankhead who had her accounting degree and nowhere to use it. The Odoms? Tobias relocated to Memphis, got a job. Built something smaller and quieter than what he thought he was inheriting. Simone had her baby, a girl. Zara heard through the grapevine and said nothing about it except, "I hope she's healthy." And she meant it. That's the thing about women like Zara, like Delphine. They don't carry hate like luggage. It's too heavy, and it takes up too much space. Space they need for something else. On the first anniversary of the day, everything changed. Zara sat down at the kitchen table, the small one, the one she used to eat at alone, across from a young woman who'd arrived at the Delphine house 4 days earlier. Nervous. Quiet. Hands wrapped around a mug of coffee like it was the only steady thing in the room. Zara looked at her and asked, "What did you love before somebody taught you to be afraid of it?" The young woman looked up. And slowly, carefully, she started to talk. The moral is simple. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the sharpest weapon you own. And the people who underestimate you are just building your testimony. If this story moved you, if you felt something, hit that subscribe button right now. New stories drop every week, and I promise you every single one of them hits just as hard. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. and drop a comment telling me what part of Zara's story got to you the most. I'll see you in the next one.